Hey y'all, Infinite Enzo here from Knox Knife Mods. Thanks so much for stopping by. We are here in the garage, workshop, work area, whatever you want to call it. I know it's a huge mess, so I apologize for that. Also, I know this is kind of weird, these earbuds hanging out of my ears, but these Apple microphones are really good and it's kind of hard to argue with. So if it bothers you that much, just tell me in the comments. I'll find another solution, but for now, we're going to roll with this. But today, we're getting into episode 2 of Tuesday Traditionals. And what we're going to be talking about today is the Barlow knife, specifically in this case, a case Barlow, and the song Fraulein by Lawton Williams and Bobby Helms. But first off, let's talk about this knife. Now this is a case Barlow from the 2019 reissue from the vault, I guess if you want to call it that. And it is a beautiful knife here in Appaloosa bone, that blue-green bone, just lovely. Nice little walk and talk on it too. It's a little bit mushy, but it's not bad. The snap is good. And blade steel in this case is True Sharp. But before we dive into more of the specific knife here, let's talk a little bit about the history of the Barlow. Now, before we get into that though, you guys should know I'm probably not the best source if you want a super factual, cut and clear kind of version of the history of this knife, but what I'll try to do is summarize it as best as I can. So the first recorded kind of history of the Barlow showing up as a production was in Sheffield, England in the late 1600s, around 1670, and it became so popular so fast, I'm sure largely because of the ease of use, the ease of carry, the utilitarian aspect of it, that it became a mainstay, and it very quickly migrated to the colonies prior to the United States becoming its own country. Very quickly became a mainstay over there as well. Up till the late 1870s, at that point it was beginning to be produced by, what was the name of the company? John Russell's Knife Company. And you'll know those by the very identifiable Arrow R on the bolsters. I'm sure you guys have seen photos. If not, I'm going to drop some photos in. But they had a very distinctive R with an arrow striking through it, and they would monogram that on their bolsters. If you can get a hold of a Russell Barlow, man, that will be a gem in your collection. But that company became known for their Barlows and the quality that they brought to it. But beyond that, it became such a ubiquitous knife that it was being produced by a wide number of companies just across the board. Of course, these days, it's produced by Chinese companies, by American companies, and who knows, companies from wherever. They're all over the place. It's funny though, because lately it's been harder and harder to get a hold of a US-made Barlow. And so that's where I kind of turned to Case, as well as Bear & Sons. They have some USA-made Barlows that you can readily get a hold of. But it's unclear when Case themselves started producing the knife. They say on their website that it was undoubtedly one of the earliest knives that they produced, which of course is pretty vague. Now, however, they started making knives, I think back in 1889, so who knows what window that would be. I would guess past the turn of the century is when they really started making knives like the Barlow pattern here. But nevertheless, they did make it, and it was reissued in 2019. It's just such a well-designed pattern, and I think Case really knocks it out of the park in their proportions, the size of everything. The blade size is perfect, I think, for this style of knife. Case's handle shape is great. The distance from the end of the handle to the bolster and the size of the bolster itself, I think, is perfect. It's just a handsome knife. This one, of course, has that nice clip point blade, but they're available in a variety of blade styles. Namely, you're going to see either a clip point or you're going to see a spear point. Personally, I actually do prefer the spear point, but this clip point does have its uses. It's probably a little bit more utilitarian. It's much easier to pierce things with that nice pointy tip. And by the way, Case did not round the tip off on this one, which is wild because they round their tips on basically every knife. So I was pretty pleased with that. Now, my personal story in picking this knife up is I was working in Gatlinburg, Tennessee back in 2019, and my son had just been born. And I got done with this job, and I got a nice little tip, in addition to my usual pay. And I'm driving back home. Smoky Mountain Knife Works is on the way home. So I think to myself, I haven't really done anything to commemorate the birth of my son, just besides celebrating it. We were very excited. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to go into Smoky Mountain Knife Works. I'm going to see what they have, and maybe I'll just buy something as a little piece of memorabilia to celebrate, the birth of my son. And I go in there and I see they've got 2 of these left. And I was just so kind of struck by the beauty of these Appaloosa bone covers, these blue-green covers. They just really caught me off guard. And what was interesting to me is that at the time when my son was born, he had these vibrant blue-green eyes, and that's immediately what I thought of. And I was like, yep, that's the one. I got to get one of these. And as I said, they only had 2 left. I handled both of them. This was the better of the 2, but I'll be honest, it was not in great shape because the blade wobble was so bad that you could hear it just click, click, clicking. It still isn't great. I've actually pinched those bolsters a little bit more to try to help it, and it does help. It's much better than it was, but it still does have a decent amount of wobble to it. However, I don't really worry about that with this knife. This is more of a knife that I carry for sentimental reasons. And to get back to the song at hand, that's kind of a reason I connected to Fraulein. So Fraulein is at its heart, it's a love song. And, you know, without getting too mushy on you guys, I bought this knife as you know, out of sentimental love and you know, appreciation for my son. So that's kind of where I draw the connection between those two. Now, Fraulein specifically, what it gets into is a soldier during World War II falls in love with a beautiful German woman, and of course they can't work it out because he's going back home to the States, and it's a whole story of him kind of pining over this lost love, and that's actually supposedly that's what happened to Lawton Williams, who wrote the song. Tennessee born, by the way, Tennessee born Lawton Williams. He wrote the song, and then Bobby Helms performed it, and I believe this was in the year 1957, and quickly became a very popular song, and it took over in Texas because of the rhythm of the song catered very well to doing two-step. And since then, it has just been like, it's been performed and recorded and sort of new versions of it done by a huge number of performers. Willie Nelson, Townes Van Zandt, one of my favorite country artists, if you want to call him country, maybe folk artist, I don't know. Townes Van Zandt's country. But yeah, Willie Nelson, Townes Van Zandt, Jerry Lee Lewis, the list goes on. More recently, Tyler Childers probably has the best version of Fraulein that's out right now. The version I'm going to play is basically similar to his, except I throw a harp in there. Culture Wall does one with Tyler Childers. So yeah, guys, it's a very, very well-written song. Yet another connection between the song and the knife is that the song takes place during World War II and is written from the perspective of a World War II soldier. And this type of knife, there's a pretty high likelihood it's the type of knife that would have been carried by a soldier during that time. Barlows have been in production for so long by so many different companies that even though it's hard to get a read on what knives were issued by what branches of the military and what knives were actually carried voluntarily by soldiers, I think it's a fair bet that the Barlow was in service during that time. To get back to the song, and what kind of comes back to me, which is why I care so much about traditional music, is that I don't think, this is a hot take, I don't think modern musicians are ever going to be able to write music better than our forefathers. I really don't. You know, I mean, we've got associations for songwriting now, and like, just Nashville's a joke, you know. It's just a whole bunch of, I don't know. When you get back down to it, you look at these old folks like Pete Seeger, you know, and again, Bobby Helms, Lawton Williams, we're not going to beat Merle Travis.
You did it! Congratulations!
We're not going to do better than that. So it's like, let's take the music and appreciate the music that these people wrote. Let's not forget it. Let's keep writing. Let's do our own stuff. But whatever happens, let's not lose the wonderful music and the wonderful stories and the wonderful songwriting that was created by I guess our forefathers, for a better way of putting it. So that's what this whole series is about. It's about talking about old knives, talking about old music, and keeping it all alive. Not letting these knives die. We're not letting the music die. So if you guys will forgive me for kind of waxing poetic there for a minute, we're going to dive into my version of Fraulein. I hope you guys enjoy it. Anything you want to add, any information that you have that I've glossed over or skipped, please put it down below, because this really is kind of, this video series is more about just getting information out and talking about the history and enjoying it. So I'd really value your input. But without further ado, Fraulein.
Far across deep blue water lives an old German's daughter on the banks of the old river Rye, where I loved her and left her. Now I can't forget her. I miss my pretty Fraulein. Fraulein, Fraulein, look up towards the heavens each night as them stars start to shine. Are the same stars above you, I swear